While I waited for the photos, I decided to look up Suzanne Thatcher and get in touch with people who knew her. This proved to be a much more difficult task than I initially thought. Calling up the apartment she lived in, all the information I obtained was that she was quiet and didn't leave her room much. No information on friends, family, or work. Just that she wasn't seen much. So I figured I'd have to go over there personally and ask them face to face. Outside, the snow was still falling, though not quite as much as yesterday. The apartment was all but closed off. Apparently all the evidence hadn't been cleared out yet. This was understandable. The blizzard slowed everybody down considerably. I walked inside and was greeted by a police officer. Flashing my badge, I moved on and looked around for somebody I could talk to. But there was no one. Not a single soul besides me and the police officer were there. "Where is everybody?" The officer looked around the apartment like he had just realized nobody was there. "I'm not sure. Guess they don't want to be in an apartment after a murder happened." Made enough sense. I told the officer so, and also that I was going to Thatcher's room. He nodded and said that it still hasn't been cleared up, so be careful with what you touch. Sure enough, the room was just like I left it yesterday, the only difference being that the window was closed. The pile of clothes I avoided yesterday were the first thing I looked through. At a glance it seemed perfectly normal, but you can never take anything at face value in my job. Looking closer at them revealed the first interesting fact. They were men's clothes. Looking inside the pants pocket, I found a pencil, a pen, and a folded piece of paper. Carefully, I lifted the flaps as to not destroy any fingerprints, and I read the only thing printed on it. 236. It looked like the pants belonged to somebody who didn't know our Suzanne Thatcher well, which struck me as odd, seeing as how his pants were lying on her apartment floor. So, Suzanne was involved with multiple men, I thought. It was the first reason I could think of. Why else would a situation like this occur? But as I said before, jumping to conclusions is how to get myself fired, so that remained as only a possibility. I set the pants down and stood up, moving over to the knocked-over drawer lying next to the bed. Inside was a Bible and a notebook. Quickly I flipped through the Bible. I've never been big on religion. Seeing people killed almost daily makes it difficult to believe in that stuff. Still, I held perfect respect to those who could believe in such things. I always imagined it must be nice. Nothing was in the Bible but the text you'd expect to see, so instead I picked up the notebook. It was virtually empty. Only the first page had anything written on it. It said, "I really don't know what I'm doing. A diary won't work. I mean, I've tried this 20 times before. Life just isn't interesting enough to keep track of it in a diary." Someone might say, "Oh, well, you just need to get involved. Go out with friends, get laid, marry someone." But of course that stuff isn't interesting. I mean, sure, it's nice and fun, but not interesting. How many people remember that stuff? It's not like someone like me would know. Maybe it's just that I haven't done it the right way. Tomorrow I'm going to start living like everyone else, happy with boredom, content with life of nothingness, and then maybe everything will be perfect. Odd. That was what I thought when I read the notebook. I read it again and again just to make sure I had everything it said down and put it back in the drawer next to the Bible. Kneeling down, I looked under the bed and saw nothing. The only other thing to check was a severely beat-up-looking dresser. A tall mirror stood on top of the dresser, and although it was cracked in the center, it still worked well enough. I gazed at myself for a time, almost as if I was having a staring contest. Slowly my mind began to turn, and I no longer recognized the man in the mirror. I continued to stare. This is something that calmed me down, reminded me of what reality was. Soon enough my own image became almost frightening to look at, but I kept staring. Finally my mind accepted the truth once again, and I opened the top drawer. It was filled with Suzanne's panties. I dug my way through them, but found nothing of particular interest. Closing it, I opened the second drawer. Shirts were what I saw this time. Again I dug through them, and again I found nothing. The third drawer was full of pants and skirts. As I moved them about, I felt something touch the tip of my finger, something painful. I pulled my hand back quickly on instinct. Carefully I pulled the clothes out one by one until the drawer was bare. Inside I could see that what I had touched was a knife covered with dried blood. There was no doubt about it. It was definitely covered in blood. What was Thatcher doing with a bloody knife? Then I remembered her fingers, crudely cut off with a rough blade. I placed the knife on top of some of her clothes and began searching through the drawers again. This time I picked everything up individually and searched it. Starting with the bottom drawer, I slowly worked my way up. And on the final drawer, as I was picking up an unnaturally small pair of panties, a finger fell to the floor. At first I didn't even realize, and I reached for another pair to look through, but then it hit me. A finger just fell to the ground. I took a step back and stared at the finger. The whole thing was blood red, proving how messy the cutoff was. The flesh that was still there looked strained, as if it wanted to break. Quickly I looked at the underwear I was holding. It too is drenched in blood. Normally I'm not a careless guy. I take my job seriously, or at least as seriously as it permits me to, and don't leave things out in the open. Which is why the blow of not noticing the mass of blood on Suzanne's underwear is so shocking to me. But that shock didn't come until later, when I found the finger. That stuff was the last thing in my mind. I ran out of the room shouting as loud as I could to the police officer. He didn't answer. I hurried downstairs to the entrance, but he wasn't there. In his place stood a man who I assumed to be the manager. He was tall and thin, like a twig, and he had a rather large beard. "Where's the officer?" The man looked genuinely surprised. "Isn't he upstairs, cleaning the room?" Confused, I corrected him. No, I'm a detective." "Where's the police officer?" "He's in uniform." "I know what an officer looks like," the man said, with a hint of anger. "And he is upstairs cleaning that room." "No, he isn't," I said. "Listen, I was just in that room a second ago, and when I was running downstairs, he wasn't anywhere there. So stop lying and tell me where he is." "He is upstairs. Geez, maybe he had to use the bathroom. Maybe he met a friend of his. I don't know, but he is upstairs." As much as I wanted to argue with the man, I knew I didn't have time. Turning around, I ran back upstairs into room 236. Inside there was nobody. Just like last time, it was messy and without any order to it. Walking inside, I sat down in a chair to catch my breath. Running up and down those stairs in a panic took the air right out of me. Gazing over at the dresser, I thought about where the police officer was. And then my heart skipped a beat. My brain stopped working completely, and I sat in a daze staring at the severed finger on the ground. It wasn't the same finger.